Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sadie, I'm the Prime Minister of Behavior, and today we're going to talk about Jeff and Shaleia Divine, the founders of the Twin Flames universe. The Twin Flames universe is a controversial spiritual group that promises to help members find their twin flame or soulmate through costly courses and coaching. As of 2025, TFU remains active despite allegations of cult-like behavior, including coercive control, encouraging stalking, and pressuring members to even change their gender identities. Documentaries like Netflix's Escaping Twin Flames and CTV's We're Not a Cult have exposed these practices, prompting a Michigan Attorney General investigation. Jeff and Shaleia deny any wrongdoing, claiming their group promotes love and spiritual growth, while former members report manipulation and exploitation. Today we're going to take a look at the interview that Jeff and Shaleia Divine had with Avery Haynes. So let's get into it.
Jeff, what do you think the public's perception of you is, and where are they wrong?
This is a great question to start because it shows how he perceives the public's point of view, and his first notion is to laugh at it.
I think they think I'm not a nice person and that I hurt people.
Why would they think that? What reason would they have to think that?
And it could not be further from the truth.
He ends the sentence with a slight smile, trying to portray how nice he is, because he's saying, you know, I'm just such a nice person, and they think I'm not a nice person and that I hurt people, and that couldn't be further from the truth. That's such a extended way of just saying it's false. It's not true. He ends the sentence with a slight smile, trying to portray how nice he is, but this portrayal will not last very long.
The words that have been used to describe you are narcissistic, coercive, bully,
Not true.
Cult leader.
Yeah, not true.
And that you have destroyed people's lives.
Not true. Not true at all.
While these words are being said, he goes, "Neil, not true," and he shakes his head while eye blocking.
So why are you the lightning rod for so much hate? Why is that?
I think because we love people.
It doesn't make sense, Jeff. The equation doesn't add up. People who love don't usually receive hate. I
That's
just don't.
not true. That's not true. Look at history.
Okay, tell me.
Well, I'm not the,
Well, you look at, for instance, like a lot of historical figures.
So Jeff states in an argument, look at history, and then we see Shaleia step in to add context. You can see that they do work together as a team. She seems to be the researcher more than anything, and he seems to be the mouthpiece in a way. Together, they both can be very convincing and very dangerous.
It's like Martin Luther King, he loved, and he was loving not just the black community, but loving the white community and loving the world, and he received a slew of hate.
While she's speaking, we look over at him, and he seems quite pleased with the fact that the argument that he started is being fought. He mills his jaw. In a way, it seems like he's saying, yeah, there, so there. And again, it just really makes me concerned about having any conversation with these people. It would be hard to defend your side because we've got one person who is very good at speaking, and then as soon as he doesn't have anything to say, she steps in and she has more of the logical attack. So together it's just a very dangerous combination.
I don't know, I grew up Catholic, so I think of Jesus, he was just loving everybody, even though it was difficult and they didn't always like what he had to say or do. It was extremely controversial back then, but he was loving them.
She brings up Jesus. They didn't always like what he had to say or do. Her head comes forward at the word say, and then she brings it back at the word do, which is interesting. She has a shoulder shrug. It was extremely controversial back then. Her eyebrows shoot up, requesting for approval, and then her eyes also narrow. It's interesting because she is now comparing Jeff to Martin Luther King and Jesus, which is really just a really interesting thing to do, to be bringing up these people in history and comparing Jeff to these people in history and somehow lining it up with it being, just very complicated, very complex. This is why he's getting hate. It can't possibly be because of his actions, of anything he's doing. It's because of he's just like Jesus. He's just like Martin Luther King.
You have described yourself as the Master Christ.
okay.
I absolutely love that she says this and says absolutely nothing to see what he will say. And he's visibly snarky about it because he says, okay. He does a little head wobble. And I noticed that he does this quite often, and it's an aggressive kind of tendency. It kind of makes me feel like he's sizing her up in a way, or just snarky. It's a snarky behavior.
Would you like to elaborate on what you like to,
Well, it's just you have described yourself as the Master Christ, right?
Right, okay.
So what does that mean to you?
It's a spiritual exploration. And, these docudramas and this cancel culture takes everything super out of context.
It's such a non-answer when he just says it's a spiritual exploration. He doesn't answer the question that's being asked. Instead, he goes into a chaff and redirect to talking about the docudramas and cancel culture, and how, they're just getting attacked by cancel culture because it can't be anything that they've done wrong.
To make it look like I'm some megalomaniac who's using these strange titles to claim power, or they say that I think I'm Jesus, and that's just so silly.
He adapts with his hair, and I think I just want to point out right now, this is something that he does on a regular basis throughout this interview, and more as he gets more and more agitated. It's one of those things that the women in this interview do not touch their hair whatsoever. There's one part where Shaleia just goes like this. He can't stop touching his hair, and you can see that it's a huge adapter for him. And so take note of when he's touching his hair, because he's visibly becoming more and more agitated, and he uses his hair as an adapter, constantly, that's a normal thing with people with long hair. But I just found it very interesting that both the women, who also have very long hair, don't ever touch their hair, except for her, Shaleia, once. But he is just all over touching his hair. He's just going like this and just trying to reposition it. And I think it's just very, very interesting. Going back to the question and the answer, he just agreed that he describes himself as the Master Christ.
You have described yourself as the Master Christ.
Okay.
And then he goes to saying that these are strange titles that are just so silly, because it's so blown out of proportion, and it's just so silly. People think I'm Jesus. But he just agreed that he calls himself Master Jesus. So he's the one that's being silly here. It just doesn't make sense. Then she asks,
do you believe that you have a direct line to God, and that God tells you what's good for your followers, what's good for your community?
That's a silly misperception and a twisted way to present how we operate in a relationship with our students. So first of all, everyone has a direct line to God, and that's what we teach.
When it comes to him, you see him milling his jaw, which is a sign of stress ramping up. He also has eye narrowing right after, perhaps an indication that he does not like this line of questioning. He responds with a look of contempt, side of the mouth talking, lip licking, and hair preening once more.
That's a silly misperception.
Once again, we see the word silly coming up. While he's saying silly, he holds both hands up, which is a regulator. And he says a twisted way to, he has a lip lick, present how we operate in a relationship with our students. So first of all, he also does, in a relationship, hair adjustment. Everyone has a direct line to God, and that's what we teach. So here he's beginning to feel the pressure. We see that with both verbal and nonverbal communications, with his uhs as well as his adapting. Sure, he has long, beautiful hair, but when he's using it as an adapter and feeling stressed, we got to start watching for this.
For us, God is love itself. And God is a loving, conscious being that created us. And we all have a direct line to God. We all know love in our hearts, and we can all choose to follow the direction that love is leading us or not.
You can also hear at this point that his mouth is dry, which is another indicator of stress. Lots of tongue juts, lots of licked lips. He's becoming more and more agitated as this interview is progressing.
And if you're a parent, you know if your child is going to do something that's going to harm them.
He says, you're a parent, which is socializing it.
And you can direct them otherwise. Don't put your hand on that stove. And if you have a toddler, they wouldn't know any better.
He does a lip compression at this moment. This is withheld opinion or withheld information. So obviously something that he's saying he just doesn't necessarily agree with, or there's more that he could say. He's comparing these adults to children who don't know any better, but it's okay because I'm protecting them. So it really just is an incredible defense for him to say, oh, you know, like, I'm protecting them. They don't know any better.
And no one at the time felt like it was abusive. And we had many dialogues along the way. Hey, like, let's talk about our teaching style. Everything was on the table for open discussion. No one had a problem with it. In fact, people felt really loved and cared for when I would yell at them in classes. They felt like someone cares about me enough to yell at me.
Obviously, if he needs to defend himself for these actions, people did not feel this way. The fact that he's even saying that people felt loved and cared for when he was yelling at them, it just makes it seem that much more unbelievable that he would know how they felt when he was yelling at them. As he's talking more and more throughout, we're seeing him doing shoulder shrugs as well and kind of getting wavy. His body language is not direct, and he's starting to lose the confidence that he had at the very start.
Because it's uncomfortable to yell at people. I don't want to do that.
His voice is going higher as he says this as well.
Because it's uncomfortable to yell at people. I don't want to do that if I don't have to. But I love these people. I want to see them grow. I want to see them thrive. And so I put myself on the line in order to be able to help people.
He's trying to show that he's the victim here, that, you know, he put himself on the line. How good of him, how just honorable of him to put himself on the line so that he could yell at people and help them see. It's a bizarre situation.
And yet, Jeff, the people who are no longer in the Twin Flames universe will describe their feelings towards that in a completely different way.
Of course. Is it okay if I grab some water?
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Do you know where my Fiji went?
No.
He abruptly interrupts the interview to grab water. This is really interesting because he does not like this line of questioning. This is his way of taking control of the interview, because he's definitely somebody who is used to having control of every single situation. And when he doesn't have control, he can't help himself but to react. This is instead of him yelling at people. Then Shaleia defends his actions.
Yeah, he gets dry mouth and he talks a lot.
I think that in reality, yeah, I mean, that's possible that he does get a dry mouth when he talks a lot. That's what happens with people. But it also happens when you get agitated. I think they're used to talking, but not used to answering questions. People don't ask them questions because when they do, they get angry. And again, going back to them being a team, when he has a break, she defends. So they really just are a dynamic duo of danger. They're not used to having people question their motives, and when they do question their motives, they don't like it. And that's why we see that there's a lot of people who describe them as a completely different way, because they're not nice people to those who disagree with them or those who question them.
So, Jeff, you talk about yelling at people lets them know that you actually are showing them love.
So he sits down and the interview gets right back to the questioning, which I absolutely love. I love her. I think she's wonderful. She did a really good job because she doesn't let him escape from it, even though he wants to. He wants desperately to take control of this interview, and she just doesn't let it happen, and I love it.
Yelling at people lets them know that you actually are showing them love.
No, but kind of.
Okay.
This completely goes against what he just said. It's a contradiction.
The people who are on the receiving end of that, who are
Sure.
no longer part of the community.
Okay.
So now we hear him getting more and more aggressive with the interviewer, especially because him getting up and taking a break from the interview was his desperate hope was to interrupt the interview right where it was and come back to it with his version and his narrative and the way that he wanted the interview to go. But he's seeing that this is not going the way he wants it to go, so he's getting short and snappy. So he starts interrupting her with responses, cutting her off. Sure, okay.
The people who are on the receiving end of that, who are
Sure.
no longer part of the community,
Okay.
felt bullied and manipulated and exploited by you. They felt like you really hurt them.
Yeah. We loved those people, and we wish them well.
He does a verbal click, and the camera shows him with a furrowed brow, an attempt to show concern. We loved those people. It really doesn't seem fitting. So these vocal clicks start showing up a lot, And Mark Bowden from the behavior panel suggests that this could be a sign of discomfort in what he's saying. So no, they didn't love those people.
We loved those people, and we wish them well. We hope that they find the healing that they seek. And it's unfortunate that they couldn't, it's unfortunate that they didn't find that with us.
He says we parted ways, and that's okay. And he does a very hard swallow.
And we did our very best to love them and serve them and support them with what they had asked us to support them with. And we parted ways, and that's okay. We wish them well.
Now, what Joe Navarro says in the Dictionary of Body Language, hard swallows can indicate something unsavory, an extremely stressful moment. It's a very reliable indicator of distress.
We wish them well.
He nods with a nice smile. This is a nice smile look that he had at the very beginning. So once again, he's really trying hard to portray this nice guy routine. Like I said before, it disappeared before and it's going to disappear again because he has to actively try to be a nice guy. He's not just a nice person. He has to try very hard to be a nice person. And we keep seeing the mask falling off throughout this whole interview. So once more, we hear him trying to cut her off with his responses as she's making a point about the victims, about these people who are feeling very hurt.
They don't feel well, though. They feel really damaged by their experience in the Twin Flames universe.
Okay.
This doesn't make it sound like he cares about what these people are thinking or feeling. And it just makes his commentary seem very aggressive.
We did everything we could to love these people.
There's a big tongue jot as he says this. Desmond Morris says that this is baby's first no. So basically what we can take from that is that he does not agree with what he just said. I also thought it was very interesting how he says these people, which is distancing language.
We did everything we could to love these people. They didn't come to us, without hurt, without upsets. And when you do the spiritual work, you become aware of your hurts. They're often unconscious. So this spiritual process is one of working through layers of your consciousness.
Then he sidesteps to their damage and how the spiritual process is. The whole point of Twin Flames was supposed to be to help those people who were hurt and who were upset. And they promised to make them better by healing them and not making them worse. But obviously they've made a lot of people a lot worse off than they were before, which is awful.
Tell me about channeling. The channeling that you received from God to decide who was each other's twin flame.
Right, I just don't like the framing here.
So we see his head wobble again, which is what we saw earlier. It seems almost like an attempt of dodging the question because he's he does it very visibly. It seems very aggressive.
Right, I just don't like the framing here. Like it doesn't line up with what our reality is.
Him saying our reality, it implies a shared internal belief system among his group, one that differs enough from mainstream understanding that it needs its own label. The group's beliefs are seen as more real or more true than outside perspectives. He doesn't want to answer the question on somebody else's terms, but he wants to reframe it on his own terms. And rather than addressing the question of channeling, he reframes not because of the logic being flawed, but because she simply doesn't get their reality.
Why does that bother you so much?
Well, there's this perception is that I'm not a nice person, and I feel like I'm being thrown in with a whole other mindset of not nice people who do not nice things to people. And it's just simply not us. It's not what we do.
This is perception management. He even talks about how he's being perceived. He is asked a question about behavior, and he talks about character. He deflects and uses vague, repetitive language.
I feel like I'm being thrown in with a whole other mindset.
Thrown in implies that he is a victim in this. There's a huge pronoun shift as well.
That I'm not a nice person. I feel like I'm being just simply not us. It's not what we do.
He is saying that he alone is under attack. But when defending the behavior, he says we.
Well, so what you're addressing is,
He does a hair swoosh again. He's becoming more and more uncomfortable and more agitated, so his need to adapt is growing.
people say that we tell people who their twin flame is. But it's a spiritual path that you have to take on your own. Like, you have to walk your path. And we know the path quite well. We're experts in our field. We've seen this happen many times. It happened in our own life.
There's no field, though. This is, how are you an expert in this field when, I mean, who has said you were an expert? I just want to point out how often he's shaking his head no while saying this. He doesn't seem convincing whatsoever, and he's got the shoulder shrugs as well.
You can see when something is coming up on someone's spiritual horizon, and we'll point that out. Hey, we invite you to explore. We don't make twin flames.
He bows down here, and he's hiding his throat. He says, we don't make twin flames. He really just wants to drive home that point, but he also, with his shoulder shrugs and his ums and ahs and his lack of confidence, it just really doesn't seem very convincing to me.
But there were 2 rounds. There were 2 specific rounds where people were told, you two are together, you two are together.
No, it's not like that.
He's becoming emphatic now. It's not like that he does another tongue jut. He starts saying, a lot.
There's nuance to this. And we live in that fine nuance. We operate there as a community in the spiritual teaching.
It's nuance, so you just wouldn't get it. Really putting a huge difference between their lifestyle versus anybody's beliefs.
It's not so black and white.
He holds his arm out, black and white. He's really illustrating a lot. He's just finding a way of releasing this pent-up energy that he's got going on.
As, you're being match made, as it just said.
Sounds like he says, you're being match made, as it just said, instead of as I just said.
As it just said, it's an invitation to explore.
He holds his hand up and he says, an invitation to explore. You'll see that his elbow goes out slightly like this. Desmond Morris called this a pugilistic joust. It's when the nervous system is trying to suppress something that is being said or something that is being disagreed with. So clearly what he is just saying, his whole body is disagreeing with it.
It's an invitation to explore.
This invitation to explore. He's sidestepping the question, and it sounds like freedom. It sounds very nice, but it's a way to minimize the influence that they have over people while maintaining control. The invitation to explore is their safety mantra. They use it again and again throughout this interview, more and more. And it deflects scrutiny, it avoids the answer, it justifies coercive behavior under the guise of free will. They claim it's an invitation, but if somebody declines that invitation, they are shunned, humiliated, or emotionally punished. If you go along with it, that's great. You're evolving. If you question it, you're the problem, resisting growth, or rejecting God's invitation.
Are you denying that there were these 2 rounds of suggestions from the 2 of you on who each other's twin flame was?
They're not denying that there was an invitation to explore, but you have to take the journey for yourself. If I said to you, you might like this veggie burger, it's up to you to try to eat it or not.
Essentially, he's giving the illusion of autonomy while enforcing conformity through group pressure. If you don't eat what they want you to eat, they throw you out of the community and call you broken. It's not freedom, it's manipulation.
Except if you're feeling so much that there's a requirement to please the 2 people who have become so important in your community. And then the choice might not be there as clearly.
We don't encourage that kind of power dynamic.
Yeah.
So once again, we see another elbow shooting out here. His hands are folded in front of him, and he's just trying to take control of what he can control.
You don't?
No.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I love how the interview questions him again, and he laughs, scoffs, no. And she says, really? And he goes like, as if to say, and he opens his hands up as if to say, what more do you want? With a look of disdain. He's just very defensive in this moment. And he's becoming argumentative.
Really? Mm-hmm. I mean, you're their guru, right? Your words have weight.
They do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, some form of acknowledgement.
You look dubious.
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
As he says this, both of his arms fan out like this. Obviously, he's trying to get air into his body. He's heating up. He is becoming more and more agitated and more under pressure. And so we start to see his body acting that out.
Well, you seem super defensive.
I feel that the framing is unfair.
But I'm asking you questions based on what's out there from your own videos, on
But
your own
it's
videos.
taken out of context.
Then how do you explain how harmed people feel? I mean, there are people who, I think you've called them your hate squad. There are people who...
When the hate squad is mentioned, his eyebrows go down and his elbows go out again, and his mouth opens for a brief moment. His eyes narrow at the same time, just for a brief moment, as if he's surprised that she knows about the hate squad.
Hate squad. There are people who feel as though you tried to tell them that they were in the wrong gender, that they needed to change gender. Not one, not two, but a number of people.
Sure, I'm happy to address, these concerns.
His chin juts out while he's saying that he's happy to address these concerns. He says that he's happy to address these concerns while his body is showing a completely different message.
We are very gentle about this subject because it's incredibly, personal.
His eyebrows go up. We are
we
very,
are very,
we hear another verbal click there. The ums and the ahs and the you knows are becoming more common as well. He's absolutely losing confidence in what he's saying. Whenever we see him kind of rocking back and forth, he is unstable. He's literally he's unstable with what he's saying.
We do not force gender change. We never have. Mm-hmm. We invite people to explore their gender polarity and see try it on, see what that is like for you.
Once again, we hear the invitation. We invite people to explore. The more times something is repeated, the less likely it is actually to be true.
So you've never suggested that somebody was in the wrong body, that they were actually a divine masculine and not a divine feminine?
So we invite people to explore their gender polarity.
But Jeff, if you have an element of control over them or sway over them,
Okay.
and they hear you say that, and they know that it will please you
That's
to
not the
adopt
relationship. That's not the relationship we invite. We're not inviting people to please us. We're inviting people to explore their spirituality, to look within themselves, to have their own personal relationship with God. It's not about me. It's never been about me. I don't want it to be about me.
The pitch raised as he's saying that it's not about me. His agitation is clearly ramping up, really trying hard. His eyebrows are up in request for approval. He's got a baton gesture. And this I found very interesting while he starts saying this. He starts off strong. It's not about me.
It's not about me.
But then he continues, it's never been about me.
It's never been about me. I don't want it to be about me.
The illustrators don't land on the words when it should, which means something is not right there, which tells me that it's always been about him.
A cynic would say, you've got a business model, and the business model relies on twin flames being found. And you guys made a decision that, we've only got women.
As the interviewer is asking this question, he adapts hugely to decide to adjust his hair once more. Then he does a weird tongue thing inside his mouth. This is self-grooming for the camera.
The vast majority of people who are following us are women. We need to make some of them kind of like puppet masters, men, and then we're going to tell those people are going to be their twin flames, and they must maintain that twin flame in order to continue showing the world that this twin flame works.
This sounds a lot like a conspiracy theory.
He interrupts the interview to say, it sounds a lot like a conspiracy theory. Weil stopped gesturing. He's using a regulator to get the interviewer to stop talking. This interviewer has laid out a clear, logical criticism, and he responds by dismissing and discrediting everything she just said. He doesn't deny any claim. He doesn't offer an alternative explanation. He immediately labels a logical critique as irrational by calling it a conspiracy theory. As he does this, he has a menacing look on his face, this big creepy smile, and she just laughs. This is a very uncomfortable feeling. It's almost bullying. It's very aggressive, and I feel like this is just who they are. This is who they are.
That's a lot of stretching going on
Well,
here.
where's the stretching, Jeff?
Could you clarify what you're asking?
He argues everything that she's saying by saying it's a lot of stretching going on here. He adapts with his watch. He has a tongue jut at the same time. obviously he's unable to answer the question and he becomes uncomfortable.
What do you, could you clarify what you're asking?
Which I find very interesting because he starts off with the argument and then he has nowhere to go with it.
You said that there's a lot of stretching there.
Well, you have this very stretched out, tall tale about what, a cynic supposes that we do here, but it's just not true.
It's not true. And then he does a lip compression to the point where his lips almost disappear completely. Now, this is what the behavior panel calls stress mouth. When the lips disappear, a lie is near. I love that the interviewer just keeps at this questioning.
But so what part of that was stretching? Because most of the people that were in your community are women, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Most women, interested in relationships. That's, yeah.
And
Sorry,
you, but
another drink of water.
okay, sure.
And then all of a sudden he's up again. He's so uncomfortable with this line of questioning that he needs to exit the conversation altogether. Once again, he's really trying so hard to maintain this control. He doesn't have any control, which is why we see him adapting and tongue juts. We're seeing him becoming more and more agitated throughout this entire interview. This is really just great behavior to be studying right now because he's just ramping up in his agitation.
It gets dry in winter, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But most of your community is women. And the premise of the Twin Flames universe is, amongst other things, that you're going to find your twin flame.
So once again, he sits back down and the interview gets right back to it, which I love.
So you've got a bit of a business problem if all of your followers are straight women.
Not true.
No.
That's not our business model.
No.
Our business model is, as I said, it's to help you look within yourself and love yourself, and that produces profound effects.
How many of your followers or how many people in your community have transitioned?
I don't know, a dozen maybe, or
He has a vague answer. There's no clarity whatsoever.
a dozen maybe, or a dozen maybe. Or
And how many of them have transitioned with the suggestions from you or as part of the exploration with you?
in the beginning, there were quite a few, and that's many of them.
Finally, there's an admission that there were quite a few, but then he goes on to say many of them. He's confirming that many of the transitions were influenced or suggested by him, so there's the admission of guilt. He says in the beginning, as a distancing tactic, implying that time has cleansed this guilty behavior, as if to say things were different then. The weight of responsibility is now in the past. Lack of structured sentence as well shows a verbal leakage. It shows discomfort and internal conflict. Quite a few sounds like a small amount, but then he continues, many of them sounds like a lot more.
I think from what, a lot of them have shared that they were feeling this way, like even prior to meeting us.
So here it's very interesting because she steps in and she just wants to ensure to add that, they were feeling this way before meeting us. So she's pushing the responsibility outward to them as opposed to taking any responsibility for themselves.
And cried when they got the news from you that they were actually divine masculines, even though they were women.
So that's not the correct framing. It's an invitation to explore your gender polarity.
So once again, we hear this invitation to explore. Like I mentioned before, this is just hammering home that this is their mantra, this is their safe sentence.
People who are no longer part of your community have said that they were told by you that they were a different gender.
Once again, we see him taking another drink, which, again, we've already mentioned the dry mouth, but he, even with all the water, he's still feeling very agitated, feeling very nervous, feeling a lot of pressure.
Are you saying that they misinterpreted what you were saying, or are you saying that I'm framing it in the wrong way?
I love how she questions this because she is bringing up the fact that it was a framing issue before, but she's acknowledging their argument before they even have it. I just love it. This interview is just gold.
I'm saying and telling you what we do in these circumstances.
But it matters what they hear. So it's what you're putting out maybe is different from what they're hearing, and I'm just trying to figure out if that's...
Well, there's an ongoing dialogue, and we are responsible for our part of the relationship. I can't possibly be responsible for someone else's part of a relationship.
It's interesting that he says it like this too, because he's telling people how to live their lives and saying that it's not his responsibility. It's like he's responsible for his relationship whereas they should be responsible for their relationship. Yet there's evidence that he has not acted this way.
But if you tell somebody that they're the wrong gender, if they hear that, so you have former followers who believed that you told them that they needed to change their gender.
It's just,
He's pushing the blame away from him as he is saying that.
it's not fair.
It's interesting to me that he talks about fairness, and once more we hear him talking about perception management.
Because the spirit of the community and the culture of the community is one of openness and dialogue and exploration and support, not this fearful, put you into the corner, you have to do this. It's just not true.
But I don't feel like I'm getting an answer to that.
Okay.
He says, okay, and he just like shakes his head no. And again, we see his shoulders kind of go like this.
I just don't feel like I'm getting an answer to that. I mean, there are people in your community who paint you both as puppet masters, as cult leaders, who have a level of control over people who are very vulnerable, and that you're abusing that control. And you're telling them what gender they are because it fits into your business model.
No. You know, we've again, you know, we are here lovingly supporting people on their spiritual journey. We are not puppet masters. We are not over-exercising our control to get people to do things that we want them to do. This is difficult work.
Yeah, it was just an invitation to explore. And they were with us at the time when, you know, we were their like direct guide, and we invited them to explore, and they could have chosen, they can choose not to do it or not to, you know.
He does a really interesting expression when she says we invited them to explore. Once again, we hear this explorer, which I'm so sick of this already, but we see him shoot an eyebrow up. He does a quick tongue jut again.
I guess they felt so invested in the community and felt so responsible for pleasing you both and listening to your words that if they didn't follow what you suggested, they would no longer be part of the community. And they were terrified of that because it had become their everything.
Yeah, we have enormous compassion for that. That's
No,
not.
but what's your responsibility in that as opposed to your compassion for it?
I love this interviewer. She's so good. I love that she asked, what's your responsibility as opposed to what's your compassion? She doesn't care about compassion. She cares about the responsibility, because at the end of the day, this is people's lives that we're talking about. And that's way more important than somebody feeling compassionate towards that.
Well, as I said, I have enormous compassion for that if that was their experience.
And then he responds saying, well, as I said, I have enormous compassion. They're really just trying to avoid any sort of responsibility in affecting people's lives.
Well, as I said, I have enormous compassion for that if that was their experience. That's not what we aim to do. And there was never any opportunity for us to be able to address that if they were having that experience. Lots of upsets and difficult challenges come up along the way. And if you stop doing the spiritual work, one might get stuck in that upset and loop it in their mind.
So they're blaming people for not doing the work that they want them to do when they start questioning things. So when somebody starts saying, hey, wait a second, that means that the spiritual work is ending. And so obviously they're going to attack.
So it's hard to see, you know, that people had a negative experience.
He's really trying to level out his voice again to seem very centered, and he's trying to go back to that nice guy that we saw at the start where, you know, he's like, I'm just such a nice person.
We did our best to love them. We wish them well. We hope they find, you know, the help that they seek. But once again, like, this is online. You can just close your browser.
When he talks about just people just closing the screen like that, you know, it just ignores the emotional dependency that people have. They've invested months or years of their lives into this. They've been love bombed into deep emotional trust. When somebody is coming into a group feeling completely alone and completely hurt, they've rebuilt their entire identity within this group. They may have cut ties with their family who don't approve of this, and, you know, they're told that this is their divine path, that this is, you know, they're looking for their one true flame or their soul mission. You just can't click out of a belief system that defines your sense of purpose and love and your sense of worth. And I think that just because it's online doesn't mean that it's superficial, and it just really seems like he thinks it is. The fact that it's online increases the vulnerability for some people because it can feel like a safe space that they can be free to share who they are. Once you're in, the digital container quickly becomes your reality, your friend group, your support system, and even your moral compass. I think that this is just another example of, cults so easily say they're free to go at any point in time. I think that him saying that they can leave at any time is very similar to that. And this is more used to absolve any responsibility while maintaining emotional control. So it gives the illusion that the freedom to escape is there, but in reality it's not. It's not there, because at the end of the day, anybody who tries to question or tries to leave is completely shunned, and everything that they have been involved in is gone. They are told that they're rejecting God or their twin flame or their soul path after doing all this work that they've spent so much time doing, building themselves, and it's such a harmful sentiment that it's shocking that he would say that.
Do you take any responsibility for the impact that the Twin Flames universe has had on some of the followers? You've obviously had time to reflect on the allegations against you.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
once again, we see another stop gesture as he's about to go off on this tangent that has nothing to do with what the question was. It's about responsibility, and once again, we see him avoiding responsibility completely.
one thing that we got wrong was that we believed once you attained harmonious union, you found that oneness with your twin flame, your person, that you would never want to leave, that you would find that relationship to be so fulfilling and so wonderful and so beautiful that you would work through what arises in the relationship to keep it. So at first we called it permanent harmonious union. And we thought that once you arrived at that place, that you just stay there. But that didn't end up being the case. And maybe it was a little altruism from young people who found true love themselves, that it would just be exactly as beautiful for everyone else that it was for us. But the reality was that everyone has a unique case, and their challenges were different. And some people found that, you know what, I really don't want this. And that's okay, they move on with their lives. And some people found, well, this is too hard, this is too close, I need to take a step back and work on myself. And that's okay, they can do that too. Everyone gets to take it at their own pace.
What's your definition of a cult?
So as far as I understand, there's not a agreed upon specific definition of a cult.
Hang on, we can actually look that up. A cult is typically defined as a group with extreme, unusual, or unconventional beliefs, often centered around a charismatic leader and often involving isolation from the outside world. Cults can be religious, philosophical, or spiritual in nature and may exhibit excessive devotion to a particular person, object, or idea. The term cult is often used in a derogatory way, particularly when describing groups with manipulative or harmful practices. That's what a cult is. I don't know why he says there isn't a agreed upon definition of cult when there is.
What my personal definition of a cult is a harmful organization, a group that extracts the well-being of its members in exchange for a delusion. And doesn't let them go.
He wants to drive home the fact that cults don't let them go.
And I can see why, how easy a target Twin Flames universe can be for that, because Twin Flames seems like such a fantastical idea. You have an ultimate lover. You have someone who's perfectly designed for you, that completes you in every way, that grows with you, that is your eternal complement. It is a divine, extraordinary concept.
Is trying so hard to separate the definition of a cult and twin flames from each other and keep it as far away from each other as he possibly can.
And I can see how people would be skeptical of such a concept.
But so that's are you guys cult leaders?
No.
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 And a cult, your description of a cult is
And once again, I feel like he's just very aware of how he looks in front of the camera and wanting to put his best face forward.
Extracting their well-being.
Extracting their well-being.
For egoic purposes. And, for a delusion, to feed a lie, to feed a delusion. And not letting them leave, like turning them into some sort of farm, like the Matrix or something, a little mini version of the Matrix, or I don't know, I guess cults can be bigger, I'm not sure. But we're not that. We help people, people free to come and go as they please. It's as simple as clicking the X on your browser and never engaging again.
Yeah.
Again, with this whole hitting X on the browser and never engaging in it again, it goes back to what I was saying about people becoming so dependent on this community and rebuilding their lives within this community, only for him to just say, well, you can just leave at any point in time. He doesn't care. It's ridiculous.
And so you absolutely deny ever telling somebody that they were a divine masculine when they were a woman.
We encourage people to explore.
No, but you've never said to somebody you're a divine masculine.
We encourage people to explore. So you're communicating more than just your words. And I hesitate to answer that question in the way that I'm feeling led to answer that question.
We see him sneer a bit there. As he's talking, he has a look of disgust on his face when he's trying to explain how he doesn't want to answer the question in her way.
Which is yes or no. But the reality
It
is...
kind of is a yes or no, Jeff. Like it
there's,
kind of is.
There's context here. The answer to your question is we encourage people to explore their spiritual, their inner world. And it's just an invitation to explore.
But so then that's an easy no to the question, have you ever told anybody that they are a divine masculine?
Well,
it's not a trick question.
There's thousands of hours of content. And so you might find somewhere in there something looking like me saying that.
Which means that he did say it. He has said it. They are saying that they haven't said it. They're not even saying that they have. They're not answering the question whatsoever. But obviously, it's quite clear that he has said this to people, and he can't say no. He can't agree with what she's saying because she's saying, "Oh, so you haven't said this." He's feeling trapped now, and this is a really great place for this interview because she's just nailed him.
You might find somewhere in there something looking like me saying that.
Something looking like me saying that. Well, yeah, because you did say that.
There are a number of people who have said that they were told not only who their twin flame was within the community, but that they were the wrong gender. And it kind of is a yes or no answer.
We operate in a very particular way, and the way that we operate is what we've been communicating the entire time.
You can see that he's getting very jittery and very bouncy and very agitated. As I mentioned before, he's just becoming more and more agitated with this line of questioning. And unfortunately for him, he's got his water right there, so he can't go anywhere for it.
And there's nothing nefarious about how we operate, and it generates profound positive results in people's lives, and it doesn't harm anyone. And so when you're asking these questions, it's from a particular context. And that context simply does not fit the context that we teach in, that we live in, that we help people with.
Those shoulders, it's just everything that he's saying is officially become so hard to believe because it really just seems like he doesn't believe what he's saying himself.
Except in the concerns about Twin Flames universe, one of the biggest, most harmful allegations is that you are dictating people's gender and that they are taking it to extreme lengths, including having surgeries and hormone therapies and changing their gender.
Well,
and so I think it's a fair question.
Of course.
That's a yes or a no, and there's not really a ton of nuance in it.
Great.
So is it a yes or a no? Have you told people to change genders?
We've invited people to explore their gender.
So you want to stay with that?
That is the truth. That is the whole truth. That's nothing but the truth.
Oh my gosh, this whole answer again, it's their mantra that's the only thing that they will say that they're leaning on because it's their get out of free statement, I guess. This is just ridiculous. It's so repetitive. And once again, like I said before, the more times that they repeat it, the less real it sounds. It just sounds like it's make-believe. It sounds like they're trying to convince themselves more than her. It's ridiculous.
That invitation to explore gender comes from God?
No, it comes from a human talking to a human.
So he obviously just scoffs and shrugs off everything that she's saying. And she's not letting him off easy. And so she asks a tough question again, and he is stuck. So this is hilarious what happens next.
No, but
Like-
do you get the message from God that someone is in the wrong gender?
If you could give me a moment to collect myself. Thank you.
They are both left in such an awkward situation where he's, you know, as I just said, he can't get up and get water because his water's right beside him. So instead, he just does this. This is his way of taking back control of the conversation and making it his. So he can figure out what to say because he is unable to respond in any truthful way. And looking at Shaleia's behavior, I find it so interesting because the interviewer looks at her like, what the heck? And she just eye blocks and looks away and looks uncomfortable. She also kind of bites her lips a little bit. And she's obviously feeling very uncomfortable. And then she starts blinking very, very slowly. And then he comes back, he opens his eyes, and he has his scripted line ready to go. And it's very interesting the way his voice is. It's even tone, and he's really trying so hard to be calm while he's saying this.
God is a loving being. God wants the best for us. I am not God. I have never claimed to be God.
No, I'm not saying that, Jeff.
Hold on, let me finish.
Okay.
I've never claimed to be God. I teach people how to have a relationship with God. And God is love. And God is found in your heart. God is found in the love in your heart. And when you have a relationship with the love in your heart, it has a profound, transformative impact on your life.
So many lip licks as he's saying this. He's really just trying to control his frustration that has been ramping up. At the end of that sentence, he's quite pleased with what he just said. So he has once more the nice guy expression.
So my question was, do you get a message from God about somebody's gender?
It doesn't work that way, no.
And here, once again, she asks this great question, and he responds with this look of contempt.
There's no channeling from God about what someone's gender should be?
So we as professionals in our work get intuitive hits, you might say. Hey, this might be a good idea. It's explorative. Like this heavy frame is just not the reality.
But Jeff, it's a heavy consequence to have kind of a whim that someone might be a different gender.
It's not a whim.
But what did you just describe it as?
So we talk about having an intuitive, experience. Hey, maybe explore this. Hey, that might be fun. It's innocent. It's from a creative place. It's from a light place. And we explore these difficult, heavy spiritual concepts, but it's done with lightness. And you're going to go through on the spiritual journey difficult things. We're going to navigate really uncomfortable situations together. And that's what we do. That's what our spiritual community supports.
Once more, we see a lot of lip licking and adapting and tongue juts and shoulder shrugs as he's saying this. He's really trying to sell the fact that this is an innocent thing. It's not a big deal, but in reality, it is a huge deal, and he knows that. I think that he is very aware of how this sounds.
But you see what I'm saying about you getting an intuition of someone's gender, and then the consequence of them hearing that.
I get how this all looks, but it's just not true.
He says, I get how this all looks, and it's just not true, but we see another look of slight contempt at the corner of his mouth, and then another adapter right after.
It's just not true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with them. It's just the framing of it. It's just, Yeah.
It feels unfair to you?
Yeah.
It's just interesting because they are so concerned about the framing of the questioning rather than answering the questions. They're so concerned about their perception management rather than how it actually is.
Do you think that it's possible that you will one day see inviting people to explore the divine masculinity and the divine femininity as a silly idea that you should move away from? That doesn't really be part of your...
Yeah, any of it. There's no sacred cows here. Like even the twin flame concept, like it's okay if it's misproven.
I find this absolutely ridiculous that he says that even the twin flame concept, it's okay if it's disproven. It's like people have changed their entire lives for this concept. People have rebuilt themselves based on this belief, and for him to just shrug it off, this is wild. He doesn't care about anybody but himself, and it's very scary because he's just there's no empathy there. There's no concept of what people have done. There's no concept of the sacrifices that other people have made in order for him to be living in this beautiful mansion. It's wild to me.
I didn't come into this from a spiritual perspective. You know, I grew up Catholic, and I left the religion in the church because of their stance on gay marriage. I felt that if two people loved each other, they should. Sorry, I'm very passionate about this. They should be allowed to get married. It was so painful to leave my church and my religion because of a disagreement. But
Okay, so when talking about something emotional, I've said this before in my other videos. When you see somebody who's upset, it really ramps up. The sadness it just builds, and it doesn't just pop on the face 1 second and then pop away the next second. So his emotional moment here, it just really is such a bizarre moment. And I think that Greg Hartley calls it going down the well. He's making it so that he's just pulling emotions to get sad. And it doesn't necessarily mean that he's sad about what he's talking about, because you'll see there is a tear that forms.
But I knew what was in my heart, and I followed that with courage. And it led me to a new path. And that new path is beautiful for me.
Why does that make you so sad?
I loved the Catholic Church. I have so much love for Jesus. And it was so hard for me to leave that all behind.
There we see a tear. Oh, it's hard. So he's obviously done a good job of pulling the emotion out. He's framed himself as the victim here, and I just find it so ironic that he's talking about how hard it was to leave it all behind when people on a regular basis who are leaving this community are struggling through that hardship themselves. So he's putting people through that terrible hardship, and his reaction to it is, oh, well, they don't need to be here. This is their choice. So I find it very ironic that he's crying over this and he's expecting to be the victim of this when he's doing the exact same thing to other people.
And follow my truth. But it was the right thing to do.
But Jeff, why is this making you so upset?
I loved my church.
But your church didn't have, you still could be a part of that church.
Well, he wouldn't have made money off of any other church.
No, I didn't agree with its fundamental principles. How could I be a part of something that I don't agree with?
How can he be a part of something that he doesn't agree with, yet anybody who doesn't agree with him, he completely kicks out and shuns and treats terribly?
And it's okay, like, I'm not mad at the church. It has the Catholic Church, it has its viewpoint, and I respect it. And I respect why it feels that way. And it led me to exploring different spiritualities, and it was beautiful. It's been nothing but beautiful for my life. But I can't deny how hard it's been. And it led me to this idea about masculine and feminine, that, there is a way that everyone wins, that the LGBTQ plus community can win and have agreement here with these, traditional views that it's only a man and a woman.
Man, the amount of hair touches and the lip licking and just everything, it's ridiculous. I feel like he is just trying really hard to appeal to somebody and feeling like this is not going well, which is why he's doing the adapters and the everything else you see.
What's the future for you guys? Is this all going to come crashing down?
No, I think if anything, we're only going to continue to thrive and be a shining light on the world, because I feel very strongly that we have something that's critically important to the world, and it's love. And it's the type of love that everyone desires, or most people desire and yearn for, and that it's here. It's a very practical spirituality that you can apply in your daily life all the time, and it will bring you closer and closer to the divine and just have amazing positive effects on your life.
It's just really interesting because we haven't really heard much from her, but she just really does seem like a very centered person, whereas he's the emotional one, and he's just been ramping up like crazy, and she's just kind of been even toned and just there the whole time, which is, it really does make me feel like they are working together. They're both in it to win it, and it's just interesting.
Why are you getting all misty-eyed?
Oh, I'm thinking about Jesus. Sorry, we go back to the other part of just thinking about, because it's very healing to address that, to talk about, why I left the Catholic Church and my views on the LGBTQ plus community. And
once again, he's making another appeal to the LGBTQ plus community, trying to pull them in.
Why I left the Catholic Church and my views on the LGBTQ plus community, and, my love for Jesus. Yeah, so just thinking about that.
Our victims, they're not victims, and they're not brainwashed. They're very smart people.
I find it very interesting here that she doesn't say our supporters, or she doesn't say our community, but she says our victims are not victims. This is so telling for me. This was one of the biggest things that caught my eye, because why would you call your victims victims? I just couldn't believe that. I couldn't get over that.
And they can choose to be with Twin Flames Universe or not be with Twin Flames Universe. And, the love and support is quite overwhelming. They love it. They love the work. And they're here because they know that what they receive just benefits their life, completely.
They love the love and the support, and it benefits their life when it is acceptable to them. But if they don't agree with something, even if it's one thing, then it's a whole different situation. Ugh. All right, what a wild interview that was. So if you want more information about Jeff and Shaleia Divine, check out the Netflix special called Escaping Twin Flames, or if you don't have Netflix, watch the Amazon Prime Video show about them called Desperately Seeking Soulmate, Escaping Twin Flames Universe. I just watched the Amazon Desperately Seeking Soulmate, and it was shocking to say the least. Definitely gives more context to what's going on behind the scenes, and really just drives home what we saw today in both of their behaviors. Please let me know what you thought of this episode. I think that interview was absolutely wild, but I really enjoyed seeing the behavior because I thought it was just so interesting seeing his discomfort. If you caught something that I missed, please let me know in the comments below. And yeah, please like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one. Thank you. Bye.